Lycurgus the lawgiver, wishing to recall the citizens from the mode of living then existent, and to lead them to a more sober and temperate order of life, and to render them good and honorable men, for they were living a soft life, reared 2 puppies of the same litter, and one he accustomed to dainty food, and allowed it to stay in the house. The other he took afield and trained in hunting. Later he brought them into the public assembly, and put down some bones and dainty food, and let loose a hare. Each of the dogs made for that to which it was accustomed, and when the one of them had overpowered the hare, he said, "You see, fellow citizens, that these dogs belong to the same stock, but by virtue of the discipline to which they have been subjected, they have turned out utterly different from each other, and you also see that training is more effective than nature for good." Today, Stoicism is a very popular philosophy to face life's difficulties. But why exactly do we need help facing life's difficulties? There is a dangerous therapeutic language that is widely used in popular culture, which has the opposite effect of making us feel more fragile and vulnerable. In a way, the rise of Stoicism has been a consequence of this trend to psychologize normal experiences of life and to treat them as if they were unsurmountable without help. This has led people to believe that they need to consult with a therapist or a counselor to get through normal life events such as rejection or confusion, as well as to place too much attention and importance on how they feel. In this light, Stoicism is just another therapeutic mechanism to quote-unquote face life, one that only exists because we are seeking methods and hacks to help us feel better when we don't feel so good. The underlying assumptions here are 1, that we should always feel good, and 2, that we need help. I'm not criticizing Stoicism or psychology directly, for both are of great help for serious difficulties and traumas such as incarcerations, wars, and losses of close ones. But I am criticizing how popular culture sometimes tries to convince us of our underlying weakness, one which turns normal life experiences into traumas, and of the importance of our feelings over social values and ethics. Just like Lycurgus and the 2 dogs, we are being trained to be fragile and selfish, which may feel good now, but works against us in the long term. I believe that a more beneficial approach to life can be found in Spartan philosophy. Spartans had strong values, they were extremely practical, and underwent a training to build up their strength and characters. Just like Lycurgus trained the dog for hunting, his laws can show us how to become valuable people with a strong and just character, true pillars of society. So without further ado, let's delve into key principles of Spartan philosophy. Be useful. When someone asked why they visited disgrace upon those among them who lost their shields, but did not do the same thing to those who lost their helmets or their breastplates, he said, "Because these they put on for their own sake, but the shield for the common good of the whole line." Spartans focused on being useful above all else. They identified success with Sparta's collective well-being rather than with an individual's achievements. An individual's courage in battle was only valued because it was the building block of Sparta's protection. Focusing on being useful will create a strong bond between you and those around you. It will free you from egoistic reactions, for you will be interested in the overall success and well-being of your family, friends, and community, rather than on your own achievements. In fact, there was a Spartan who, when he was not chosen as one of the 300, which was rated as the highest honor in the state, he went away cheerfully and smiling. But when the ephors called him back and asked why he was laughing, he said, "Because I congratulate the state for having 300 citizens better than myself." Focus on results, not intentions. In answer to a man who said that he commended him and was very fond of him, he said, "I have 2 oxen in a field, and although they both may utter no sound, I know perfectly well which one is lazy and which one is the worker." A key principle of Spartan philosophy is to focus on results, not intentions or words. This goes hand in hand with being useful, for if you truly value the well-being of those around you, you should focus on what you concretely do for them. To focus on results orients you toward success, for if you get complacent with having good intentions, you may never complete your course of action. Focusing on results means to do what you ought to do rather than to say what you intend to do. A psychology study showed that publicly announcing your goals reduces your motivation to pursue them, for you indulge in the fantasies of your desired outcome without ever pursuing the goal through action. In other words, it is much easier to feel good by saying what you want to do than to actually do it. To focus on results protects you from this phenomenon, for your interest lies in a certain outcome rather than in having people recognize you. In other words, when you focus on results and on being useful, you are selflessly interested in the outcome you wish to bring about, and you will do what you must in order to do so. Disdain Luxuries. According to Spartan king Agesilaus, Spartans disdain luxury because it granted them their freedom. The mode of living which he followed personally was in no wise better than that of his associates. He refrained always from overeating and from heavy drinking. Sleep he treated not as a master, but as governed at all times by what he had to do. And such was his attitude towards heat and cold that he alone was able to make good use of the different seasons. And in his tent, which was in the midst of his soldiers, he had no better bed than anybody else. At any rate, when someone inquired what advantage the law of Lycurgus had brought to Sparta, he said, contempt for pleasures. Great freedom comes from valuing nothing beyond what you truly need, and you need very little in order to live well. A good job, a roof over your head, and meaningful relationships. Many of us have these things or even refuse them, and yet look beyond them for satisfaction. This is the road to unhappiness, for the human ego can never be truly satisfied. Disdain for luxuries leads to a tranquil life that is free from the suffering caused by chasing after your desires and possessing things you don't actually need or want. Disdaining luxuries saves you time and energy that you would otherwise spend chasing useless things. Seeing in Asia a house roofed with square beams, he asked the owner if timber in that country grew square. And when the man said no but round, he said, well then, if they were square, would you finish them round? King Agesilaus said this to point out the pointlessness of squaring wooden beams, which according to him were useless luxuries. If squared tree trunks are luxuries for the Spartans, imagine to what degree they would condemn our lifestyle today. How many of our possessions could we actually live without? How many things do we chase after which we don't actually want? When we abandon our desire for useless things, we find a deeper and more stable sense of peace and tranquility that does not depend on our possessions, but rather on having a good character and living well. Focus on character. He was continually saying that the commander ought rightly to be superior to the privates, not in soft living and luxury, but in endurance and courage. He advised his friends to endeavor to be rich, not in money, but in bravery and virtue. Character is the substance of a person. We get to choose what we think and how we act and who we are. Therefore, it is important to value character as the characterizing aspect of who we are over possessions or appearances. People who have a good character make society strong, which is why Sparta was so respected and feared. If you cultivate a good character, you become a source of good for others. Having a good character is therefore a greater honor than any other. On his way home from Egypt, death came to him, and in his last hours he gave directions to those with him that they should not cause to be made any sculptured or painted or imitative representation of his person. For if I have done any goodly deed, that shall be my memorial. But if not, then not all the statues in the world, the works of menial and worthless men, will avail. For Spartans, a good character is courageous and just. According to them, these two virtues are complementary, and of the two, justice is the most important. Anaxandridas, the son of Leo, in answer to a man who took much to heart the sentence imposed upon him of exile from the country, said, "My good sir, be not downcast at being an exile from your country, but at being an exile from justice." Being asked once which was better of the virtues, bravery or justice, he said that there is no use for bravery unless justice is also in evidence, and if all men should become just, they would have no need of bravery. To focus on character primarily means to work on your own character, but also to judge and value people based on theirs. Spartans emphasized the importance of character in determining the worth of a person. The suitors of his daughters, when after his death he was found to be a poor man, renounced their obligations. But the Ephors punished them, because when they thought he was rich, they courted his favor, but when they found from his poverty that he was just and honest, they disdained him. Until we can perceive a person's character as their defining characteristic, we cannot see people for who they truly are. Are the people around you just? Are they courageous? Do they act kindly and patiently? Do they take care of the people around them? Begin to see this deeper aspect of people instead of judging others by how they look or what they own. It will lead you to an entirely new perspective on life. Respect law above all else. Pausanias, the son of Pleistoanax, in answer to the question why it was not permitted to change any of the ancient laws in their country, said, "Because the laws ought to have authority over men, and not the men over the laws." When someone inquired why he was an exile from Sparta, being a king, he said, "Because her laws are more powerful than I am." What made Sparta so strong was its respect for the philosophy and the principles that Lycurgus had laid out for Spartans. Once you have clear principles, to follow them becomes a matter of discipline and consistent practice. It is imperative to embody your principles in your daily life and actions. In fact, Lycurgus never wrote down his laws, but embedded them in the education system of Spartans so that they would learn a way to live rather than memorize rules. So commit to your principles every day and spend time with other principled people so that you may learn from one another by observing how you live. To me, these principles are the building blocks of a good life. There is much that the Spartans can teach us, and their philosophy is part of the greater wisdom that comes to us from the past and which inspires us to this day. In future videos, I hope to approach a much deeper concept that addresses the very foundations of wisdom, knowledge, and of good character: the concept of mystical knowledge. This is an idea I've been pondering for quite some time now, and God willing, in the next video we shall explore it. Until then, I wish you the best in your quest for goodness. Thank you for watching. If you want to support this type of content, you can buy me a coffee or a book, probably a philosophy one, with the link in the description. All your support is greatly appreciated. And if you know someone who could benefit from this video, make sure to share it with them. If you'd like to see more, subscribe and stay tuned.